everything that had been drying out all day was gone. And first day of winter, the grass dries. So basically no chance to create any hay at all on that last day, and I was kind of relying on it. Now, as it is, I have a ton of hay bales in a shed by the cow barn, and I'm going to have to transfer some of that over to the sheep, the barn near the sheep, so that the sheep have some food close by during the winter. And then come spring, I'm going to have to cut more hay. And I should be okay there, because spring tends to be fairly dry going into summer, which is when I do my cut. But yeah, it's a challenge, because the weather is not always cooperating. Now with 9-day seasons, I should be able to get most of it done, regardless of the weather, because there should always be a couple of days of where the crops are dry. Also, I'm not doing grass on this farm. The only animals we've got are chickens, and they don't eat grass. So yay chickens. Okay, we can drop that. Oops. Did that come off? That did come off. Okay. So I can turn that off. We'll take the camera around, jump out, close the door. So how are our chickens doing? So if I look back here, we still only have 45 chickens. They're producing eggs good. So yeah, these chickens here, I guess I could go, where is it? Oh, I'm in the right place. So if I stand here, yeah, these chickens are only worth nothing. They get up to 0.1 of a year, they're worth $1. And as they get heavier, they're worth more. So the mummy chickens are worth, no, those are the roosters. The mummy chickens are worth $5. But any of these chickens that are less than five euros, I can sell. That's profit to me. That's money I have in the bank. As I said, we don't have any other pens available to us. There might be some pens on the map, but not really seeing. That's a lime station. Oh, we can bounce. Well, let's see what happens when we visit the animal dealer. I can buy chickens. Yeah, we only have access to a chicken coop, so the only thing we're allowed to buy are chickens at the moment. If I placed a pig pen or a cow yard or something, then we would have access to buying those, but they all cost money, and we don't have a significant amount of money. Is this my farm? This is my farm. Yay. I should be running time a little bit faster so we can go to sleep again. Well, this isn't bad. We've actually run, what would it be, an afternoon and a full day. But we haven't had much in the way of contracts to do so far. It is very slowly getting us to the point where we can harvest. Time-lapse clouds. Okay. Where'd I put my deck chair? We can sleep for 11 hours. Again. Great demand for the sawmill. They want us to make wood chips. Again, I don't have anything to do wood with. Okay, we don't have any contracts to go. step up the time a bit. So the other things we find in seasons. Here is the weather report. It's cloudy today. Tomorrow is cloudy with the chance of sunshine. Chance of sunshine or cloudy sun on Monday, Sunday, Monday. Tuesday will be bright sunlight. Wednesday cloudy, Thursday rain. With 50% chance of rain. Now, what we have down here is the drying potential. If I was to cut grass that is either dry or I ted the grass, then it will dry into hay kind of slowly. Overnight, not a lot of drying. Tomorrow, once the sun comes up, it'll dry slowly. You can get 2+ here, which means that drying potential is really good. There is a risk if you do silage contracts that the grass will turn into hay before you get it baled and wrapped. So you have to watch that. Also, if you've dried the grass, if you've got dry grass or you tedded the grass and it rains, it turns into wet grass and you have to go and get a tedder and ted it, but you probably have to wait until the ground is dry before you ted it, because otherwise it just stays as wet grass. So what else do we have here? We also have the temperature expected, and it's kind of warm, which is good. We were on the seasons menu. Crops, not that one, this one. So we're currently in day 3 of summer. You can plant soybeans, you can plant corn. You can't plant cotton around these parts, and you also can't plant sugarcane around these parts because we're in the middle of Europe and those crops don't work. If the ground is too cold, then the temperature here would be blue, indicating that the seeds aren't going to germinate if you plant them. Potentially they could die, but in general they will. Now, frost resistance is a good indication. If I plant sunflowers in cold ground, the sunflowers are probably going to die. If I plant wheat, barley or oats in cold ground, there's a fair chance they'll survive. And if some of them don't survive, it's only going to be a little bit of small patches, much like the weeds look like. Once the wheat, barley and oats get to a very early growth stage, they become incredibly resistant to cold, to frost, which is why you can plant, if we go back to there, you can plant wheat in the fall and you go into winter, and if it snows the wheat won't necessarily die, so that's a good deal. Soybeans and corn don't like cold at any time, and once the crop is mature and basically ready to harvest, if you get a frost you're gonna lose that crop. Corn not so much. Corn is actually resistant to frost late in the year. Okay, we got drought resistance, which is temperature. Okay, potential drought damage increases when the soil water is below 12%. So these seeds do not like dry ground. Seeds generally don't. Now, if the ground does get below 12% and you've got growing crops, there is the chance that those crops might die in patches again. And if we go and look at the map, much like, okay, where was it? This patch there, that's a failed to germinate. Basically the ground got too cold and the seeds died out on that tiny little strip there. But the rest of the field is fine. Now if the ground gets too dry, we could get patches that appear like this in other fields because the crop dries out due to lack of moisture. At the moment we're not seeing that. The only problem I have is where I drove the tractor over that field with big tyres. Oops. But it appears much the same as the weeds. Fail to germinate or fail to grow or died while growing. Anyway, so our crops are now at I call the light green, this one is planted. This one is growth stage 1, this one is growth stage 2. We still have to get to dark green, which is stage 3. We shouldn't see anything at stage 3 right now. I think my fields were the earliest to be planted. In the normal course of events, once I'm playing into a second or third year, I'm planting my wheat, barley, oats and canola during the fall. So as soon as I take the crop out of the ground, I'm ploughing that or cultivating that and reseeding it almost immediately. So I get a tiny little bit of growth here. The crop's dormant during the winter, and then come spring it's starting to grow. It's fully growing. If you plant in spring, you're probably not going to be harvesting until mid-late fall. If you plant in fall, you're actually going to be harvesting this crop in late summer. That's kind of nice, especially when you have issues with 2/3 of my fall days are rainy. If I can get my crop harvested during summer, that relieves some of the pressure to harvest your crop later in the year or later in the fall. On lower folds I have all of my wheat, barley and canola in the ground before winter. So I have late summer and all through fall to harvest that. And for the most part I can get that done. That's easy. Because summer's generally fairly dry. And even when it rains during summer, you might lose 3 hours in the day, but the drying potential is then such that it's going to be dry within a couple of hours. So you're always going to have some part of the day that's workable. How are we doing with contracts? Any come up? Nope. So that's basically covered arable and chickens and some pig, cow and sheep theory. So field info, I've got the expanded field info running, which basically tells me things like this is all fertilized 100%, there are no weeds, the size of the field and the size of the land. So there's 0.14 of a hectare around, possibly that roadway, and the edges outside of the definition of the field. Before this one we planted, there was light shade before that fallow. I don't know what nightshade is. I haven't planted any lately. Same with that one. But you have this idea of crop rotation. In general you want to and there is a screen for it. Crop rotation, there you go. So I want to plant canola, wheat, sunflowers, wheat, back to canola, or sunflowers, oats, and just keep flipping between the two. You don't want to plant your wheat, your barley and your oats and your corn successively. They're all the same family of crop and they draw the same nutrients out of the ground, so you start losing productivity. If I said this one needs to be wheat, productivity is 95%. If I say that one needs to be wheat, it's 0.86. So I am losing productivity successively if I plant wheat, then wheat, then wheat, then wheat. Oh, I can't back that one out until I backed that one out. There we go. But yeah, it's barley's the same, oats is the same, and soybeans is just bad all around. Corn doesn't do as badly as wheat, barley and oats, but it isn't ideal. You want something that has a better yield. Potatoes is bad, sugar beets is bad. So basically what you want to look for is, if you want to plant soybeans, you really want to do fallow first and then put the soybeans in, because then you get a bonus yield. But anything else, and soybeans 95%, 86% after other soybeans. So the yield of soybeans is not as good as other crops can be in a rotation. So what you need to do is leave the field fallow, which is basically don't plant anything from a year and then plant soybeans, and you'll get a good yield of soybeans. But frankly, most of the rest of the crops tend to fare better if you we got some more contracts. Well, it's I think a little bit late. Yeah, we are tearing through to nightfall, so I'm going to walk back to home. But again, that makes your play more realistic. You can plant corn every year, but your yield is going to get worse and worse and worse as you go. Now, I can't remember the geo that I'm using. This Seasons Come has additional what they call geos, which are geographical locations. I'm using a Central European one. So it's slightly different from the UK, which is the base season. Going there. So for the obvious example is you can plant wheat in the UK all the way up to the end of fall. In Central Europe you can't. So I'm guessing it's starting to get really cold around this time. Not cold enough that the crop gets destroyed and you're not going to get snow until midwinter, but it's too cold for your seeds to survive. And different geos, different periods of planting. In the US, you might find that your harvesting period can start earlier, and potentially I could plant here, harvest here, and then plant again here and harvest during the winter, because it never gets too cold in some of the southern states. So you could get potentially 2 crops a year. So if you want to do soybeans, you could do no crop for the first half of the year and soybeans in the second half of the year, or something like that. Anyway, oh crap, it's night. It's morning already. Where's my deck chair? Okay, we only want to sleep for about we'll sleep for 8 hours. And there we go, 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Now, there were contracts last night. There still are, and they're paying quite nicely. However, it is 11 o'clock real time, so I think I'll take a look. Ah, good. So we're in the final stage of growth, stage 3. or stage 4, depending how you want to call it. Yeah, we're slowly progressing this along. It's gonna be, we have to go back to the seasons menu and slow down time to 1 times for a minute. So we're not able to harvest any time during midsummer, but this is the last stage of, if we weren't fully fertilized, I want to be looking at fertilizing our crops and what have you. We might be able to harvest this in late summer. I'm not sure. We did plant fairly early, so there is a slight potential that might be. Oh, that's the other thing I've noticed. Yeah. So on this geo, Central Europe, you can plant your soybeans and your corn in mid-spring. In the UK geo, you can't plant them until late spring, early summer, maybe midsummer. Not sure, but yeah, geo affects planting and harvesting seasons. It affects the temperatures. So if you pick a southern state geo, then you're going to be able to plant cotton, you're going to be able to plant sugarcane. Pick South America, you're going to be able to plant sugarcane, you're going to be able to plant cotton. So yeah, that's what the geo affects. And then the other part of seasons is the crop value. Best time to sell wheat is in the middle of winter. Same with barley. Same with oats. Canola, you want to plant, you want to sell at the end of fall. Sunflowers, New Year's. Soybeans, actually midsummer. Today is a good day to sell soybeans. Similar with corn, although there's another peak in the winter. Potatoes, winter. Sugar beets, same. Cotton, spring. Now the other thing you'll notice is the way this works is there's an average plot. So pricing is averaged for the year until you hit that day. This day is the actual price of the crop today. This is the actual price of the crop yesterday. This is a predicted price for the crop tomorrow. Now once we've progressed through the whole year, this will all be actual previous year values. And as we go into next year, we're going to say with some certainty that this is a good time to sell milk, or a better time to sell milk than late spring. But great demands can also affect that. So, for example, we might have had a great demand on this day for cotton. And if that happened, it's artificially pushed the price up. And we can't rely on that coming into next year, that there's going to be a great demand. Now, you also find the same thing with animals. Let's do that. So, the Limousine and the Sailor are meat-producing cows. So today is the best time to buy a meat-producing cow, and yeah, the higher price is actually, today's kind of a good day to buy cows. They seem for the most part to be at their cheapest. The Brahman cows are all meat only. Dorsets are sheep, and they're currently getting cheaper. So yeah, the worst time to buy sheep is right when you start a new game. You want to wait till fall, at which point they're probably not going to be producing much in the way of wool for half a year. Pigs, interesting. That's more. Oh, this is the hens. So hens, kind of a good time to buy right on the first day. Obviously much better later on the year, but we can't predict these prices. This is just generated for the geo. White leghorns are the males. I think the Rhode Island Reds, so there's not much difference there. The rooster's the same. So anyway, prices of animals vary, so you need to time your purchase and sale on animals in much the same way you do with the crops. So we will harvest the crops and then we will probably hold on to most of them until midwinter before we actually ship them to market to sell. If there's a great demand, I might consider it. Playing Lawfolds with seasons, there was a great demand for wool, and the great demand was twice the value of the wool on the day the great demand came out, and not only that, was also better than the price I could have got for wool later in the year. So if we go to wool, it was kind of down here and I got a great demand, so rather than being worth 859, it was all worth 1600, and 1600 is worth more than the best price for wool. So I just said, I'm selling that because it's the best price I'll ever get. Now obviously if I got a great demand here and it doubled, then yeah, okay, fine, I lost some money. But yeah, it's a sort of take what you can. You can never predict, you can never rely on the prediction. Yeah, the price of wool is going to be about 1100 at this point in the year, maybe 12, but this is a bad time to sell it. But if you get a great demand that pushes the price over 12 towards 1400, then take that chance, because it could be the best price you get any time in the next 12 months. Okay, so as I said, it is gone 11 o'clock. It's a work day. I have to go to work tomorrow. Well, actually, I have to stay at home and work, so I'm going to call it here. I'll wish you all a good evening. We'll see how I feel tomorrow. I'm trying to make sure that Ungetsheim always goes out on a Monday evening, and Lawfolds or its prospective replacement will be our Saturday morning stream. Outside of that, I'm not feeling too guilty not putting streams out every day at the moment, because we are in the flux of selling a home and trying to adopt a child. So yeah, real life is going to get in the way, at least for the next 2 months. So everybody have a good day, good evening, good day tomorrow, and if I feel like it, I might play something tomorrow night, but we'll have to see. But for now, I need some sleep, so I am out of here.